but why is it important? Course of my career, I know everybody on this panel and those of you who are watching as our audience, if you've been in this career for any amount of time, you've lost friends, either to line of duty death or to other causes, right? For me personally, I have lost far more friends to medical issues like heart attacks, cancer, strokes, or their own hand than officers who have been killed in the line of duty. So why is self-care important? Because every one of those non-line of duty deaths was preventable in most cases if they understood why self-care was so important.
Welcome, everyone, to our inaugural relaunch of our podcast. So before I get into what we're talking about, I'm going to do a little bit of a backstory. A few months ago, we started doing these roundtable discussions and just were like, let's just have a conversation because the conversations need to be had. But the conversations were so good and we had so many amazing guests coming on and powerful topics that I was like, not only do these conversations need to be had, they need to be heard. And I probably should take this serious. So I took a pause from recording. We have 15 episodes that are on YouTube. We're keeping those up because those are powerful conversations. But this is the first of our official podcast roundtable series where we talk about different topics and we have a strategy this time. So every month we have a dedicated topic. Every week we have different guests coming on talking about that topic. And at the end of the month, we're going to have a live group coaching call so you can actually join in the conversation. You can talk with our guests that we've had on and actually get something out of this. This whole podcast is what's in it for you, the listener. So we are kicking off this series with prioritizing self-care because here's the deal. If you were to get into your patrol car and go try to chase somebody, but your tank is on empty, your dashboard's lit up, and you got smoke coming out of the engine, are you going to make it very far? Probably not. So why are you doing that individually? You're running on fumes. It is important. You cannot serve and help other people if you are not taking care of yourself. So with that, we're jumping into prioritizing self-care, and I'm joined by my awesome team. I'm going to start with my partner in all things, Chris Zamora. Will you please introduce yourself?
Hi, Chris Zamora. I'm retired law enforcement from Arizona. I did 23 years, and I got to work several different investigations positions. I was also a DT instructor and fitness instructor. So currently, I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and a yoga instructor and CEO of law enforcement coaching. So
There's
I'll turn
that.
it back over to you.
I'm going to have Ken go, and then Vin will have you go.
Hi, everybody. My name's Ken Koch, retired law enforcement professional with 35 plus years experience, both on the sworn side and the civilian side. Worked in Arizona, New Mexico, and finished my career here in Colorado. Served as chief of police and basically just about every other assignment you can think of in law enforcement during that time period. So glad to be here.
Thank you. And Vin, one of our new additions to the team, and we're so stoked to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. Vince Scotto, I did 20 years at the New York City Police Department. The majority of that time, probably 13 years as a supervisor, mostly in a patrol-related function with some investigative work as well as a training component for a brief period. I've been trying to be an advocate in this mental wellness space for specifically law enforcement officers. And I do have a background in financial planning, investments, and retirement planning, things of that nature.
Awesome. Powerhouse team, lots that we can talk about. And the other thing that I want to share with our audience is that, no offense to you guys, but we do not have a team of knight in shining armor. You guys all have your dents and scrapes and all of the stuff. You have been to battle, you have been through long careers. But the thing is, it's not even that you've figured out how to maneuver with the armor, but the important thing is you've learned how to take it off and get back to living life. And I think that's something that our first responders, because yes, we're law enforcement coaching, but this is
Mhm.
applicable to not even first responders, but all purpose-driven professionals. If you are of service and you're trying to give back to people, you're going to get something out of these episodes. So I want to talk about prioritizing self-care. And first of all, what even is self-care? Let's start there. When I say that, I know what my answer is for that, but when I say self-care, what do you guys think of?
The first thing that comes to mind is just something I had to learn in my journey uh, when I fell on some really hard times. And it sounded in the beginning like psychobabble BS, but I was told by a clinician, you need to learn how to love yourself first. And I didn't understand what that meant until I did. And now that I understand that, I can't help but lead with that. If you don't prioritize yourself first in every way, emotionally, physically, financially, you can't be your best for anyone else. So it always begins and ends with you.
Ken, what were you?
Yeah, and I was going to basically say the same thing,
Sorry,
self-care
Ken.
about self, right? But it's individual for each one of us because taking care of yourself also means managing and nurturing your relationships that are important to you, whether that's your spouse, your family, your friends. Those are important things about self-health as well, and it's very specific to the individual. We in law enforcement, we have these catchphrases that we love to have kind of try to cover everything like self-care and that kind of stuff. And it is so broad in scope that you really have to define for yourself what that means.
Awesome. Chris?
Ken, you brought up a good point. We do have catchphrases in law enforcement, and one of the catchphrases we have or terms is officer safety. And how do you associate officer safety with self-care? Well, self-care to me is what are the hobbies out there or the things that I like to do that keep me happy, that keep me balanced? If I'm a balanced person, does that increase my officer safety at work? We don't really associate that, connect the dots there, but it actually does affect your officer safety because if you're having trouble at home, if you're having trouble physically, if you're having issues outside of work, you're going to bring that into work when you're on your shift. And what does that do to your officer safety if you're constantly focused on something else? So self-care is detrimental to every first responder. That's what helps keeps us balanced.
Awesome. For me, self-care, there's a couple different parts of that. A lot of time what I hear is, well, I work out, and that's beautiful. We all need to work out. That is a stress release. It does, release chemicals in the brain, the oxytocin and dopamine, all of the good things, and it keeps our body fit. And I also get a lot of this. When we go to teach or we're talking to people, we get the arms crossed at the back of the room, being like, I'm fine. And we all know that I'm fine in the first responder field. Here's the thing about the suicide rates. We all know the statistics. And unfortunately, pretty much every time I go onto my LinkedIn, which I'm linked in with over 1,000, I mean, only 1,000, but over 1,000 first responder professionals. And pretty much on a weekly basis, there has been another first responder suicide. And it's not necessarily that they're just really sad or worn down or broken. It's that they have not thought it was okay to reach out. They're suffering in silence. And a lot of time what I hear is it's somebody that you wouldn't have expected. It was a top cop. It was somebody that had seemed like they had it all together. And so when I hear the I'm fine, sorry, but I'm kind of like bullshit because we can be fine, but you need to be doing preventative maintenance. You need to have your systems in place because if something happens, when something happens, it doesn't have to be in law enforcement. It doesn't have to be this worst case scenario. It can just be a, a hiccup in life, but you're going to wake up and have a really hard time. And if you don't have anything in place, anybody to talk to, it makes it that much harder. So for me, self-care is having multiple avenues that you can go because I'll even share this in our worksheets and everything. There's a mind map, And so in the middle of that, it has a circle where you put either your name, self-care, or whatever it is that you're working on. And it has these arms that go out with little bubbles of the different categories: your physical plan, your mental plan, your emotional plan. And then from there, what is your plan? So I'm going to put the visual up here so it makes sense. I'll edit it in. But for my mind map personally, for my physical, I yoga, martial arts. I have two massage therapists. I have an acupuncturist. I have a chiropractor. I have all of the things to keep my aging body optimal. Because once you hit 40, things change, just so you know. So that's just one thing. And then I have arms for all of those. So do you guys have more than one thing in place for your own self-care? And what is that if you're willing to share?
I don't want to steal. uh, so once again, getting back to a place where things weren't so great, uh, I realized that I need to be physical in different ways, whether it be exercise or sport. I feel the endorphins that are released really level me, puts me in a better state of mind, physically as well as mentally and emotionally. Kind of gets me back level, so to speak. And then I added to that when I had to go through some times where I had to kind of readjust and reacclimate to a different way of life. I learned some other skills. For example, journaling. I found for me personally, writing down the thoughts that were in my head, whether it looked like gibberish on paper or not, it didn't matter. It just got out of that hamster wheel kind of way of thinking, uh, the rumination, so to speak. I was able to kind of clear that out of my brain, and I felt it put me in a better place. Some things that I implement currently now that I try to do almost on a daily basis. We all have negative thoughts. We all get frustrated about different things, whether it be our physicality or something that we can't control. And as law enforcement officers, we want to control things. We're in the business of trying to control a situation. And unfortunately, in life, it doesn't work that way. So I call it like a paradigm shift. When I'm starting to feel a little agitated about something, I kind of press pause and I just remind myself of the things that are going well, not the things that maybe in my mind in that moment are not going well. And it's been very helpful. I'm not saying it's perfect every time I do it, but these are three strategies or three ways of my daily way of life that I feel help.
You just said one thing. You said in my mind. And that's a really good little phrase because one of the things that I've learned is, did you have a bad day or did you have a bad 5 seconds that you turned into a bad day? Because our
Exactly.
minds really do shift our reality, and what we focus on, we get more of.
Exactly.
Yeah. For me, I think like most of us, we go into this profession because we want to serve something greater than ourselves, right? And you end up getting so immersed in the profession that you don't have any outside engagement. You don't have any life outside of law enforcement. When you're at work, you're at work. When you're at home, you're listening to the radio. When you're playing golf, you're playing with your buddies from the department. You're just constantly immersed in this world. And for me, the biggest lesson really came out of a book that I read by Viktor Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning. And in that book, he makes the point that we are response able. And what he meant by that is not responsible. We are able to control our responses to environments that we don't control. And it's so hard for us, as Vin said, as cops, to admit that we do not control everything in life. And life is going to throw us changes. And how you choose to respond to that really dictates your mental health and your physical health, even going forward. So that was a lesson I picked up about 7 years into my career. I used it every day since, and I still use it today because even in the retired world, things happen in life that you didn't anticipate. Costs come up, medical issues come up, and you just have to be able to roll with the flow, if you will, and acknowledge the fact that you're not going to be in control of everything, and you just have to make the best of it.
I love that. Thank
Agreed.
you. Chris?
Vin, did you have something?
Oh no, I just said agreed to Ken.
Oh,
I
yeah. I
always
mean,
have something.
oh, that's good. Uh, but yeah, you guys are right. It's life. Life happens, and life has its ups and downs, and that's why it's so important to have these self-care hobbies or whatever it is that makes us happy, that keeps us balanced. Because if we have that, that helps us to maintain a balanced life. So when those major issues come up, we don't collapse under the pressure, because sometimes we do. And I'll admit, I'm a coach, and I'm doing this. I can tell you guys and try to convince you guys, oh, I never have issues because I got my shit squared away, right? The reality is, no, I'm a human being, and we all have issues here and there that pop up. But what prevents me from going into that dark place is having other things in place, like self-care, preventative maintenance, things that give me an outlet to be able to alleviate that stress. Because yeah, there are times where it just feels like the whole world is crumbling around me. And fortunately, I've had things in place that help me keep going. If I isolated myself and I had nothing, I stopped doing all the things that made me happy. And then life happens, and it really hits me hard. It's going to be really difficult to get out of that. Right. So, and I know this firsthand because I was there. I was there, and I call it the dark place, that deep, dark place. It feels like a deep, dark hole. And no matter how hard you scratch and try to climb out of it, you just can't get out of it. Right. So learning from that experience, again, this is why we created law enforcement coaching, and created our team of coaches, because we recognize that. And we hope to educate others, and really bring it to the forefront that self-care, preventative maintenance, it's huge. It's important for every first responder.
So
If
I
I
have
can add,
a,
oh, sorry.
nope, go.
I wanted to add to something Ken said and what Chris just said. So I had someone say this to me many years ago, and they would say, don't let anyone rent space in your head. And it really stayed with me. And I still implement that way of thinking. Whereas with the control piece, when we're out there professionally, we have to handle things a certain way and sometimes make quick decisions without putting a lot of time and effort into it. But then how do we process that when the uniform comes off? And what I've found, at least in my trajectory, it ended up carrying into my personal life where I was trying to control what happened in my personal life with my family. And we all know, the four of us, that's not a good thing to do. So getting back to the space in your head kind of thing, I would be thinking, well, this should go this way. Why isn't it going this way? And I would get that anxiety and that frustration, and it would unfortunately come out a lot of times with anger, and that's not good, right? It's like we start a fire and I pour gasoline on that fire. It's only going to get bigger and bigger, right? And burn out of control. And I feel like we have a tendency to kind of do that in our lives if it goes unchecked. And something Chris just said about like that dark place, the four of us realize what that feels like. And I think we need to lean in even more and talk about that, whether it be the four of us here on this podcast or the people that we interact with, the people that are listening. This is good. Communication is good. None of us have the answer, but we do have some skills that we've implemented, things we've learned along the way that we can impart that wisdom, and we can figure things out instead of pushing it under the rug. So I feel ultimately that communication is the key.
Yes, agree. And that's one of the reasons that we're doing this because, as coaches, we do one-on-one sessions and we're working with one person at a time. It's not enough. We need to be able to speak louder and to more because there are so many people that are needing to hear something. And we're going by the hope philosophy. Hope, help one person every day. So if this podcast only reaches one person, then that's the right person. Whoever that is. I want to say too, there's a couple things. You guys are making such good points. So I'm going to spin it, or just bear with me. I'm going to go on a little Tami tangent. So going to what Ken said about responding, that we have the choice of how we respond. And Chris and I teach the difference between reacting versus responding. So reacting is when you are in emotional imbalance, basically, and you react to the situation. You fly off the handle. I'll share a little story in a second. Responding is when you're in a balanced place. You can take a deep breath, you can take a beat, really think it out, and then respond accordingly for what's best for the situation. Now, in order to be able to respond, you have to be taking care of yourself. And when you're not, if you're what we call the HALT method, which you have to halt, stop, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If you are any of those things, you're going to probably react to the point where Chris and I just got back from a road trip, which should have been a 6 hour drive. I drive because I get car sick otherwise. What should have been a 6 hour drive turned into an 8.5 hour drive because there was construction, there was traffic. Then my stupid GPS detoured us off the freeway into side streets when we had 17 miles. And I know it was 17 miles because I was done driving. Should have taken 17 minutes. And we got routed off the freeway into regular LA traffic. The freeway's fine too, by the way. And I was hungry. I was angry. I wasn't lonely because Chris was there, even though he was sleeping half the time. And I was tired because I was tired of driving. So I was out of balance and I did not handle it well. I had a little meltdown with a lot of cussing and flying off the handle. But what did bring me back into balance is while I'm getting off the exit, realizing that I'm being routed into a route that I don't want to go. Now, when I'm in a balanced place, I trust that detours are for my protection. I know that I'm being set up to be exactly where I need to be when I'm in a balanced state. But I was not. I was hungry and I had to pee. So I was not happy. And meanwhile, Chris is sitting there and I'm like, why are you smiling? I'm flipping out. And he's like, that's where they filmed Back to the Future. Like, so he was super happy because we were like paused so he could take it in, and I was missing it.
Did that make it worse for you? Tell the truth. You probably got a little annoyed with that, right?
Oh, he was like, if we just take that exit, I'm like, we're not taking that.
You take
How
the
did I
exit
know?
though.
Well, we took the
That
exit, but I
exit,
wasn't gonna go there. I just wanted to get done.
the exit actually dumped you right into the mall if you turn left. But the problem is you turn right. And LA traffic, there's no way if you're on the right lane, there's no way you're going to make it to the left lane. But I'm trying to, salvage this. I'm like, well, the universe is telling us we should go to that mall because it's a 40-year anniversary of Back to the Future. I mean, it doesn't get more clear than that, right? We didn't, but I wasn't going to argue.
Chris, you could have offered a little shopping therapy. That might have worked too.
Oh yeah,
You
right.
could have
We
bought
would
her
have
a
been
nice item of some sort.
Yay. Yeah.
there. Then you're
Coaching.
not helping me, buddy.
So, but I share that because we're all human. I mean, Chris and I, like, we're going to a wellness summit where we live and breathe all of this stuff. We're fully trained with all the wellness tools in our tool belt, and still we have our moments, we have our days. So, one, go easy on yourself, give yourself some grace. But if you're acting like that all the time, it's probably an indicator you need to do some self-care. So, the other thing that I wanted to say, you guys are talking about the dark space. And about a week ago, I had a client, I had a text that stopped me in my tracks because I'm doing my thing. I get a text, and the first line is, when does the heaviness go away? So let's talk about that. Because here's the thing for those that are listening, the heaviness is temporary. It does go away. But the longer that you sit inactive on it, the longer you stay in your brain creating stories, trying to control things. So this gets said. I was watching a couple different podcasts last night. Every single one said the same thing, so I'm going to echo it. And if you hear it more than once, it means it's important. Anxiety comes from thinking too far ahead, trying to control things that you cannot control. Depression comes from hanging on to the past, the coulda, shouldas, I should have done that, the good old days. Presence. If you talk about presence, it's not a hippie monk on a side meditating. It's just being present where you are, looking around the room, being thankful for what you have in this moment. If you are watching this podcast, stop right now, take a breath. Look at what we're talking about. Look around your surroundings. Be present. Get out of your head. So that is one way to get rid of that heaviness. That's easier said than done when you have that weighted blanket on you. So with that, when you guys were in your dark time, because yes, Vin, we've all been in our dark. I've gone through many dark times. When you're in it, what were some of the key things that helped move you out?
I'll share first. Recently, several years ago, I was having a hell of a problem with what I termed being motivated. I could not get motivated to get out of bed. I could not get motivated to get out of the house. I could not get motivated to get off the couch. And with the help of a coach, actually, I reframed that and realized it had nothing to do with motivation. I wanted to get back to working out. I wanted to get back in shape. I didn't have the discipline. And the difference between discipline and motivation is huge. What I learned from that process was I had all the motivation I needed. I wanted to go do those things. I simply did not have the discipline to do it, even though I didn't feel like getting out of bed that day, or because I didn't feel like going to the gym that day. And when I shift that framework, when I shift that focus from my response to being unmotivated to being, I'm going to become disciplined and do this even when I don't want to, it was like the weight came off my shoulders and I'm back to the kind of shape I was in when I was 35. And things are great now. So a lot of times for me, it's just shifting that mental focus and the terms you use when you talk about the difference between motivation and actually having the discipline to go and do it and stay committed to your passions, whatever that might be.
That's awesome. I love that. Who's up? You guys are being
I'll
polite.
jump
What do
in.
you
Vin.
Uh, so I think one thing we can all agree upon when you find yourself in that place, regardless of the reasons that got you there or the story behind it, we could understand each other and someone else out there that we interact with. We know the feeling, and we wouldn't wish that almost like on anyone because it's that bad. And Chris says a dark place. I sometimes call it circling the drain, where you literally feel yourself just slipping away, and your instinct is you want it to stop, and you'll do almost anything to make it go away. And unfortunately, those thoughts of ruminations and ideations sometimes rear their ugly heads. And we all know that's not the answer. But when you're in it, it doesn't matter in a lot of cases who sees the light. You don't see it in that moment. So the question is, how do we get out of it, right? And we've all found a way, thankfully, and we're here to talk about it, thank God. So when I put myself back in that place, and I could bring myself back there as we're speaking. I'm actually visualizing what that felt like as we're here on this podcast. And I couldn't do it alone. As strong of a person I think I am, and as confident as I am as I sit here now, I was a shell of myself in those moments. And I needed support. So, anyone out there that's listening, it's okay to feel like I need help. We're able to do that. And I know in our profession, we're the ones that are there to help. But we are human, and there are times in our lives we face these challenges. And if we let it go unchecked, we can find ourselves in these deep places, which we've all been in. So now we need to sometimes learn how to let go and allow people that want to help us, that we trust, to help us. And I think law enforcement coaching is one of the pieces to that, as far as being able to lean on a collective group of people that have lived it. We've walked in your shoes, and we have the experience of going through some of these dark times. It's not like we're reading from a book and we're saying, okay, this is what we should be telling people. We've lived it and we've come out on the other side. So for me, I needed that support. As once again, as confident as I am, and I think I can handle my own business, I fell on some really dark times where I needed other people to come and support me. Even though I fought it in some ways, I finally had to come to the realization I can't do this alone. So that was the beginning. That acknowledgement piece for me was crucial. And
And
to
you're
Tammy's point, it wasn't easy. This wasn't something that happened overnight. It took time to get to that place of acknowledging I need help.
Let
that's a
me throw a question at the panel here and for our audience. I know the answer for myself to this question, but for each of the rest of you, were you prioritizing self-care at that point in your life prior to going into that dark space? Could you have done a better job of self-care and minimize the impact of some of those dark experiences you had in your life?
For me, yes and no. I was taking care of various aspects, but for my particular trajectory, I wasn't taking care of my intimate relationship. In my case, I didn't uh, I didn't nurture my marriage the way I could have because I feel I was stubborn and I had the mentality, well, I'm not being appreciated at home and I might go in tonight and this might be it for me. So I'm going to do things in a selfish way. And that wasn't the answer. So even though I was taking care of myself physically in terms of like exercising and I was eating healthy and I wasn't I was doing very good professionally, when the uniform came off, there was, I don't want to call it a chip on my shoulder, but I felt unappreciated in my marriage, which led me to make some bad decisions where maybe if I had more understanding of the dynamics of an intimate relationship, maybe I could have gotten beyond that and not have found myself in that deep place where I lost sight of myself, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
you know that's a great question, Ken, because it got me to thinking. When I found myself in that dark place, I was a homicide detective. First of all, I found myself in that dark place twice in my career, and at one point, I was a homicide detective. I was on SWAT. I was an instructor. I was going to school to be a clinical hypnotherapist. I was a new dad, right? I'm a husband. I had all these things, but my main focus was at work. Right? I would work, more than 10 hours per shift. Sometimes, being a homicide detective, you go home and then you get called out or you're on call on the weekend. And so I was always working, working, working. And I remember one case, I responded to a barricade as part of SWAT. Well, by the time I got there, everything was what had come under control. But because there were shots fired in that, now they turn it over to me because I'm the on-call detective. So now I'm there switching roles and I'm there for another, you know, 10 hours. And I was burning myself out. And what was happening in the meantime? Work was good. Work loved me because I'm dedicated, right? Because I'm going into work when I need to go to work. I'm putting in the extra hours. I'm teaching, I'm training, I'm doing all this stuff. And we sometimes we confuse dedication with overinvestment. And that is something that I think a lot of us don't recognize because Vin, you're right. We must have that self-awareness of what's happening to us before it's too late, before we find ourselves in that dark place. And oftentimes we look at dedication. I'm a dedicated cop. I'm a dedicated detective. Look at all my responsibilities that I'm taking on. And I'm willing to go into work. I'm willing to drop everything I'm doing at home to go to work. You see a problem? You find a problem with that? If I'm willing to drop everything at home to go to work, what do you think my wife at that time, I'm now divorced, surprise, But what do you think my wife feels at that time? Right? We have a newborn, and here I am leaving her alone with our son, and I'm going to work. We oftentimes we forget about what's happening at home because we look at I'm a dedicated cop. My agency needs me. We put our agency first. I was putting my family second, and I was putting my own self-care third, right? That's messed up. As a first responder, we go by the priorities of life, right? We put innocent people first, then ourselves, then the bad guy. And so oftentimes we're putting other people first before our own. And so it's okay to put yourself first. Be balanced, right? Recognize when you're overinvested at work. Recognize here's the difference between overinvestment and dedication. When dedicated, you're dedicated to yourself, you're dedicated to your family, you're dedicated to your career, right? I'll say that one more time. When you are dedicated, you're dedicated to yourself, to your family, and then to your career. I put it in that order because if I'm not dedicated to myself and I'm not good, how am I going to take care of other people? I'm not going to be able to, right? This is why we go into that dark place that we don't ever want to be. When you're overinvested, you're solely dedicated to work, right? Overinvestment means you're dedicated to work and you're ignoring your family and you're ignoring your own self-care. That's the difference. Vin, did you have something?
Yeah, I wanted to add something to that, and you mentioned about being married and being more dedicated to work. I think there's another component to this, and not to get too deep in the woods, but one of the things I had recognized further on down on the other side of a broken marriage, I did understand the family first piece. I really did. But within that structure, the one thing that I realize now that I didn't fully realize then, I thought I was protecting my spouse by not sharing things that I encountered at work. And just for the record, she's a clinician. And we talked about this years later. And only within the last couple of years did it come up in conversation. And I apologized because I thought I was protecting her and the family by not bringing it home. But what I ended up doing in my particular case, it was viewed as alienation. So I think you have to find the fine line within that as well. If you are able to get past what you struggled with, you're still not out of the woods, right? There's still that other component and figuring out the balance within that.
And you're right. We do. I did the same thing. I never shared. I just responded to the death of a baby. You think I'm going to share that with my spouse? No. Being a homicide detective, every call out was death related, and some of those scenes were very bloody. You think I'm going to say that I'm going to share that with her? No, but you're right. We protect our significant other when you get home and your wife asks you, "How was your day, honey?" Fine, good. How short is that? How does that make them feel?
It's
You know,
dismissive.
yes, exactly. But if they can put themselves in our shoes, what are we doing? We're protecting you, right? We're protecting you because we don't want to traumatize you with what we just went through. It's traumatic for us. We definitely want to bring it home. So for all those that are listening to this podcast, just know, have some kind of communication with your significant other, uh, because let's be honest, our spouse, we're all grown adults here, right? And you have to talk to your significant other. What are the boundaries? What would you like me to share with you
Exactly.
about my day? Because I will. Do you not want me to go into too much detail? What do you want to hear? What don't you want to hear? Allow your spouse to make that decision on
Have
what.
input.
Yes, exactly. Because I get it. I totally get it 100%. We're just trying to protect them. But they're grown women. They're grown men and women out there. Listen to them, talk to them, communicate.
So it's funny you said, and I was thinking of the word, and you said it, and it ties back into the self-care piece for ourselves, setting boundaries.
Yep.
right? With ourselves and the communication and relationships we have, whether it be with our intimate family nucleus or colleagues or other family members. And that's one of the things that I had to learn too. I thought, like, I can handle it all. I need to control this. I need to do all these different things. And I put myself last. And I was thinking, well, I can't be selfish, but it wasn't selfish. It was self-care. And it took me a long time to understand the difference between the two.
You're right. It's not being selfish. And we look at it like, oh, I can't indulge in this, whatever, going to the gym and working out and spending an hour at the gym while my significant other is at home with the kids, right? We feel guilty. Don't feel guilty. If that's what you need to help balance you out, definitely get it done, do it. Go home and then say, hey, honey, thank you for letting me go to the gym. If you need to go and decompress or do your thing, by all means, go ahead. Tammy and I, we do that all the time. Sometimes she just has to get out of the house while I watch the kids. And I don't question anything. Do what you got to do. Take your time. Do whatever you want to do. Because she allows me to also go to the gym and, be stress
Is that
free.
mutual respect that you built
Yes.
because you've learned it over other past mistakes and you're more evolved now. I mean, we live and we learn. And I think the hardest part is sometimes doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That's like the first sign of insanity, they say, right? So thankfully we're more evolved, and that's a good thing.
And for spouses that are listening to this, spouses have the biggest hearts, right? A cop spouse, a firefighter spouse, they have the biggest hearts. They want to take care of their husbands, wives, whatever it might be. But for the spouses listening, just know the universe does not revolve around your first responder, significant other. You are a human being as well. You also need to take some self care for yourself, right? Because we hear this often that they're basically walking on eggshells when their husbands or wives get home and they're catering to their every needs. No, this is a mutual relationship. As much as they need to be stress free and they need those outlets, so does the spouse. That is important. And for first
So
responders listening, yeah,
it's fun. It's funny you just said that. So as you're sharing this, I'm thinking my own personal dynamics, and it's kind of like this dance. They don't put their priorities first, and you said they're walking on eggshells. Meanwhile, you as the first responder are thinking, well, they don't care about what I did today. They're not asking any questions. So now you have this uh, this Mexican standoff, if you will. And all that does is prevents communication, right? And what comes of that? Resentment, right? We think that they're thinking a certain way, and they're really not because the conversation's not happening, and it becomes this vicious cycle that over time just explodes. At least that was my experience.
Yeah, let
We didn't
me
have those
just kind of
communication.
expand
We
on
didn't
that.
communicate.
If I can expand on that a little bit, a little background on me. My father was a cop. I'm married to a sheriff's deputy, retired. I've been around law enforcement my entire career. That also means that I was the son of a police officer. And I spent many nights when my dad was supposed to be home at midnight, listening to my mom walk around the house at 2 a.m. because she couldn't go back to sleep. And I was waiting for a knock at the door, right? Because dad was supposed to be home 2 hours ago and he's not. This impacts far wider family dynamic really than just the spouses, right? I still have painful memories. Luckily my dad made it through his career. He's fine, alive and well. But I have painful memories of thinking, oh my God, dad's not coming home. Dad's not coming home. Um, my wife and I, in our law enforcement career, we had the benefit of being able to communicate about the things we experienced at work because we were both cops. 35 years later, we're still married. But one of the boundaries we set, we agreed that if we were ever going to be more than 2 hours late getting off shift, we would call regardless of what time it was. So that the spouse at home knew, yeah, he's just going to be late. He's okay. And that for me was a godsend because every time she didn't come home when she was supposed to, guess where I was? I was that teenager back at home in Tucson, Arizona, waiting for the knock at the door because dad's not coming home. So this goes much deeper than just the spousal relationship. And I think first responders need to remember that their kids are being impacted by some of this stuff inadvertently as well.
Oh man, You guys just dump so much, and I'm sitting here so quiet as the female on the panel, as the spouse, and the also a child of law enforcement. Um, oh, there's so much. Good job, guys, first of all.
A lot
So,
to unpack.
a lot to unpack, but it's really valuable stuff. And we are in a few months going to have an entire month dedicated to relationships, so we'll really dive into some of that. But for right now, you guys nailed one part, the communication part. And it's true. There's typically two types of officers. The ones that come home and are protecting their significant other by not sharing, which miscommunicates and mistranslates. That feels like you're not telling me anything, can't help you, and then it's like the Big Bang Theory, if anybody watches that, where Sheldon
I
knocks on the
know
door,
it.
he's like, Penny, Penny, Penny. That's what the spouse is. Hello, are you good? Are you sure? Are you okay? And now it feels like you're in my bubble, just I'm fine, leave me alone, right? But your spouse feels alienated, left out, and they want to support you, and you're not allowing them to support you. The other thing that officers will do is they will come and share everything with their spouse, which is fine because, like you said, Vin, yours was a clinician. Ken, yours is also law enforcement. Was raised, my dad, the way that my dad raised me was you need to wear your helmet because I'm not going to scoop up another kid's brains off the sidewalk. So that was me when I was like 5, coming out with that kind of visualization. I can handle the stuff that Chris shares with me. However, there is a thing called secondhand trauma for when we're coaching, for therapists, for friends, for when you're listening to somebody else's story, we visualize it. And those, even though the brain doesn't always know if it's real or if, we watch TV, and that's why we have visceral reactions, because the primal brain's like, okay. So if you are a spouse or a supportive role for your first responder and you're listening, you also need to have self-care, and you also need to have somewhere. Do not hold all of their crap as your own. So many people, especially if they're empathic and intuitive and sensitive to energies and want to help people, they will hold everybody else's crap, and then it doesn't have anywhere to go. And now all of a sudden they have all these different issues, health issues and whatnot. So you have to be, don't be a sponge, be a rock in a river. Let it all flow over you. Listen and be supportive, but let that shit go. And some of the ways that you can clear that energy, and I'm not going to go too hippie woo woo, but these are scientific. Google it, it's science. Get in the ocean if you're near the ocean. If you are not, take an Epsom salt water bath. Guys don't like, you can put, I feel like the scene from Friends where Chandler takes the tugboat. Make it a masculine bath, but take a bath. Get into salt water. Salt helps clear that energy. And when you're in the shower, just imagine all of that heaviness, all of that other crap just going down the drain. Visualize. And then you can also like literally like dust yourself off of getting that stuff. It may sound weird, but it freaking works. And you're holding on to other stuff. So that's one thing. My next little tangent is the communication. The key part of communication is listening. And then for the men that are in relationship with female, action. Action speaks louder than words. Do not give lip service. If you say that, yes, yes, I'm going to do that. Okay, yeah, I'll take out the garbage. Take out the freaking garbage. Not in 6 months. Just do it. Anticipate the needs because that's a partnership. Okay, that's my female perspective.
That's good. That's good because I'm
Right?
getting all these flashbacks now.
Chris is great about taking out the garbage. Thank you.
I'll take the garbage out, but you're going to replace the bag. Right?
That's true. You
That's a
may do
partnership,
that.
right?
I usually do both now.
Well, here's the next thing I'll share a little bit more. So the dishes. I'm gonna air our dirty dishes.
Our dirty
Another good
station.
one.
They're clean. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm not gonna call you out for that stuff, but here's the thing. So in the partnership, so I do the dishes because I'm very particular about how I do the dishes, and he doesn't do them to my standards. So he's just like, the dishes are your thing, which in one part is fine. However, there's some times where it's just like, if your spouse is wanting things a certain way,
Are you a Scorpio?
no, I'm a Leo.
Okay.
It's the other one.
I'm a Leo too.
No, so you know.
I do.
But also take time to learn how your partner likes things, what your partner likes, and consider them. Chris and I, we just took our trip, And he tells me when I book our accommodations, he's like, I don't care. I'm like, yes, you do. You very much care. So when I booked the thing, I could have booked a boho flowery thing for me, but I took him into consideration, knowing he doesn't really like to travel. And so what's going to make him the most comfortable? And he loved it. So put your person into consideration.
Did you love it?
He really did.
It was great. Yeah, no, it was.
Okay, all right.
It was yeah, it was awesome.
Okay,
I definitely loved it. Yeah, good
okay.
job. And it was funny because I was like really happy with the place. And she's right. When she says, "Hey, where do you want to stay?" I always say, "Don't care. Don't." It's we're traveling for business. Don't care, right? And she's always really focused on getting the perfect location. And in this trip, it was great. It was like an over 100-year-old hotel, and it was just beautiful on the inside. And on the second day they were leaving, I said, it's funny how we just ended up here at this place. Like it's like perfect, right? And she goes, "Excuse me," like total attitude. And we just laughed at that. And because she's right, and I do say I don't care, but I guess I do care.
You're bougie.
So I
We
appreciate
don't
you for considering me in your decision making.
we don't care until we do care, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Meaning like everything is fine until something gets our Irish up, and now it's a problem.
Exactly. And then that affects the relationship, and that's another layer of resentment. So we will definitely go
Exactly.
heavy into the relationship dynamic. But I want to honor everybody's time. This is a really great conversation. There's so many nuggets of wisdom. So there's a few things for the audience tuning in, listening to this. Again, these conversations are not just talking for the sake of talking. We hope that you are getting something out of this. If you have questions, if you have pushback, by all means, you can comment where we're putting this out everywhere. You can comment. We check the comments. You can email us directly at podcast@lawenforcementcoaching.com. Everything goes to me. I read everything. I take it all serious, and the whole team want to be of service. We're all sitting by waiting patiently for that person saying, "Hey, I need some help." And we will spring into action to serve you to the best of our ability, meet you where you're at. We will be having the live group coaching call. So tune in, go to our website, follow the calendar, check it out, sign up, join that conversation. If you think somebody can benefit from this conversation, including your spouses, please share this out. Like I said in the beginning, these conversations need to be had, but the most important is they need to be heard. And honestly, to be fully transparent, we've been doing this for about 5 years at this point. We have played the game. We've gone in, we've had the meetings with the departments. We're working on all these things. And my frustration is we will have departments that are like, yes, we love this, we need this. And then they get blocked because there's not enough budget, or there's not enough, somebody says no. And the officers and the personnel are not getting the resources and help that they need because of bureaucracy, red tape, and bullshit. So we're bypassing this. We all are coming from a place of passion and purpose. We want to help and serve. We want to strengthen everybody, which in turn strengthens and helps the communities and the other people. So this whole podcast mission is to serve you, the listeners, and be as transparent and give you guys realistic things that you can actually implement. One of the other pushbacks that we hear sometimes, because our whole team, we're very proud of having all law enforcement first responders as our coaches, and we haven't taken on any civilians. And some people are like, I don't want to talk to a cop because they're just as messed up as me. Yes, and yes, and they understand. My team, our company understands what you've been going through. My saying in life is misery loves company. We're not company. We are not afraid to go to your dark place with you and sit there. We understand it. The main thing is my entire team has figured out how to move out of that, and we can help you get out of it as well. And we're not trying to get you, if you're at a 0 in a dark place and the scale of 100 of being super happy and shiny, we might not try to get you there. If you're at a 0, we're going to get you to a 2. And that is good enough for now. We're just getting that needle moving a little bit. So that's my passionate tangent. Again, I should probably call the podcast Tami Tangents, because that's just what happens. But maybe that'll be the spinoff. final thoughts before we end this? Everybody, please just give your last little mic drop. What is that piece of advice? If they tune in just to the end of this and it's all they hear, what's the takeaway? Ken, we'll start with you. No pressure.
Yeah, so we started off saying, well, what is self-care, right? And we all kind of agreed that, well, it's specific to the individual, but why is it important? Course of my career, I know everybody on this panel and those of you who are watching as our audience, if you've been in this career for any amount of time, you've lost friends, either to line of duty death or to other causes, right? For me personally, I have lost far more friends to medical issues like heart attacks, cancer, strokes, or their own hand than officers who have been killed in the line of duty. So why is self-care important? Because every one of those non-line of duty deaths was preventable in most cases if they understood why self-care was so important.
That's powerful. Thank you. Vin.
Oh, uh, so I come from a sports coaching background as well. I didn't mention that in the beginning, and I was involved with training athletes specifically in baseball. And I only bring that up because one of the things I used to say to the athletes, be your own best coach, meaning if you were watching yourself perform or you were trying to be inspirational for a fellow teammate or friend, what would you say or do? Do it for yourself. Show that empathy for yourself. And I think sometimes, especially us as law enforcement officers, we have a tendency to be harder on ourselves than we might be with someone else. And I think we have to kind of flip the script on that. So that ties into the self-care piece where, hey, be your own best coach. Be that cheerleader on the shoulder for yourself.
Be the person you need when you needed them the most. Absolutely. Awesome. Chris?
Yeah, when it comes to self-care, along the lines of what Vin is saying, you have to take responsibility for yourself. Self-care, preventative maintenance, don't expect your department to step in and make you do some self-care, make you do some preventative maintenance, because the reality is it's not the department's responsibility for your own self-care. It's your responsibility. So don't if you're going to put in for some training and the department doesn't have the funds for it, well then if you want that training for some self-care options or something that's going to help you, then take the initiative and get it done yourself. Don't wait for the department to do that. That's important. You have to take ownership for yourself. Now, the other thing too, for departments that are listening, just know if you invest in your people are going to be happy. Your people are going to be more professional and you're going to gain some longevity from them. You can get 20 plus years of service from somebody if you take care of them because, there's a thing called loyalty. And I think back about on the best supervisors, the best sergeants that I've ever worked for. And the best ones are the ones that I felt cared about me. I would follow them anywhere. I was super loyal to them because they cared about me. If I called in sick, I'd get a text or I'd get a phone call. Hey, are you good? Do you need anything? That was it, right? Something as simple as that showed me that they cared. And so, along the lines for departments, it's okay to invest in your people. Um, and again, for the individual, invest in yourself. Don't wait for the department. Find ways to get that training or get that whatever it is that you need to help keep you balanced. Tami?
No, that's great. Retention is such a buzzword topic all the time, and everybody's looking external for all of these different fixes. Retention starts within.
Exactly.
Take care of your people. If you, oh,
Spot on.
that's a whole nother thing. My last little 2 cent is you are a reflection of the people you surround yourself with. So if you are surrounded by super negative people, it's really hard to stay positive. So maybe you can't control who you're working with. You can control yourself. You can control how you show up. You can help be a little bit more positive. And when you clock out, go make sure that your inner circle is not a toxic environment, that's a supportive environment. And if you're in a small town or you don't have access to people that are helping you grow and stay healthy and balanced, surround yourself with books, with podcasts. There are so many first responders and the kind of the older generation, but there's a lot of people doing podcasts out there and they're coming from experience. So whether you resonate with us or not, I never take that personal. Some people are going to like me, some people aren't. That's the whole reason why we have a team, because you're going to resonate with somebody. But go listen to those podcasts. Listen to what all of the seasoned officers and military and first responders are coming on sharing, because we all know that there's stigma, but the stigma that's starting, that honestly, that's an excuse at this point, because there are enough first responders shouting into the abyss saying, hey, there is a better way. And so we are getting loud with that as well, because there's a better way. So with that, thank you all for being here. For the audience, again, reach out. And if you are in need of support, my team is here to help you. Our team is here. We are here to be of service and meet you where you are. Thank you so much. Tune in again next week. More topics on prioritizing self-care.